We're very pleased to now introduce Zaven Demerjian, who is going to talk about space to place.
So, this is a rug, but I'd like to call it my magic carpet. So I'm going to put this on the floor. It's one of the oldest forms of art. It's been around since the dawn of civilization. Sheep, cattle, herding, agriculture. I might add, this is a Caucasian Armenian rug. This is where rug weaving started in the world. And I'd like to start with talking about my experience, how I've come to talk about space to place. And so I'll start with, as I was a little kid, I had a very active imagination. Didn't have that many friends, but I had friends that were also kind of active Imagineers. And so we'd walk around, we'd start playing things like Solomon's Treasures, or Indiana Jones. And, you know, this was a playground with concrete and cement. And we didn't have that much, we didn't have toys or anything, but we had a lot of imagination. And so in a space this big, you could have a castle, you could have a horse-drawn cart, you can have swords and bricks and trees and rivers and valleys in this little space. And all you needed was your imagination. So let's move on a couple of years. My parents were very active, creative people as well. They were in fashion, travel, writers, caterers, events managers. And so we moved around a lot. So by the time I was 14 years old, I probably moved about 20 to 25 times, living in different cities every time I went. So what happened was, every time I moved, the room that I had, the space that I had, I would write a little note to myself, or a note to the next person that was going to move into my house or in my neighborhood, and I would stick them under trees, under rocks, in my room, in a crevice, in a corner, under a rug. It was my way of trying to interact and communicate with the next person that was going to come to that space. In a way, I was trying to present to them what that space meant to me, which was my place. So, what does place mean? First of all, we have a great example over here. This is a space. It's an abstract notion of what we call space. It's multidimensional. We have a line, we have a two-dimensional, and we have three-dimensional. Us, 3D. So you come from the abstract, and then you go on to another abstract notion, because it's very subjective. It's very personal. It's an experience that you have. It's unique to you. So place, there's a really famous human geographer, Yi-Fu Tuan, one of my star gurus. And Yi-Fu Tuan basically started thinking about these concepts of space to place. He wrote a book, Space to Place. If you ever have a chance, read it. And so basically what he's trying to describe is how place is generated, created. So it could be physical, just because we exist in a place, we exhibit, we interact with it. It could be personal. We've had experiences in a place, memories. It could be cultural, because a group of people coined it, termed it as a group of collective experiences. History took place in there. It could be social, just because we're interacting with one another in this place. I'm talking to you guys. You guys are integrating this information into your own experiences, and we're kind of connecting. And whether or not everyone in this room makes an experience that they take with them, the fact of the matter is, this experience took place in this room, this space. So we're creating place right now And I know that there's a lot of place and space words going thrown around, but if you could just bear with me. So, coming back to my childhood, I go from let's see, elementary school. We move around a lot. I end up moving to the Middle East. I have no idea what this place was like. Never been there, don't know the language. And I'm trying to understand this space. I'm trying to create place out of it by learning the language, understanding how to interact with other kids, how to communicate with them. So I have a bunch of very unique experiences that I create while I'm in that new country. So fast forward a little bit more. I start picking up stamps and postcards and old letters and things that I pick with me. They have to be very small because I'm moving around a lot. And so with each stamp, each postcard, each piece of paper, I'm using these as direct references to specific memories. So I could have a little bag of little stones or papers or marbles or a paperclip, and every time I touch that object, I remember something. And quite frankly, that was all we could really move around with, because every time we moved, we had to give away everything. So this concept of giving away, accumulating, giving away, this has been ingrained in my consciousness. And so I've had a lot of time to think about what it means to imbue objects with meaning, and how to imbue objects with meaning connected to the different places that I've been. So, fast forward a little bit more. I'm 17 years old, and I decide to move back to the United States by myself. I have a couple $100 in my pocket, and I have a dream. I moved to this country, and I must admit, I hung around on the streets for a couple of days. I didn't have a place to live, but that was okay, because it affected the way I thought about my surrounding. It was a new country, big buildings, big boulevards, new restaurants, lots of dreams. And this is the foundation that this country is based on: dreaming, and then acting it out, making it possible. So I came, and I started going to work, and every place that I sat down, when I had the moment to dream, I would sit down and I would think about all the different experiences that I've had. Now, each place that I sat down, I was interacting with that place, with that space. I was inherently creating my own place. So when you go to that place now, whether it be a brick, a stone block, or under a tree, or maybe around the corner from a street by a water fountain, places that I've hung out, you can't see anything because that information is not hanging on a piece of paper in midair saying, you know what, Zev stood over here and had this experience. That memory is not connected to that space. So, all this I'm going to connect, so please bear with me, because I need to kind of give these foundational ideas, thoughts, before I'm able to go on with the rest of the presentation. So, shuffle around, I finally get into Berkeley. Amazing university, lots of creative people, lots of interesting people. Every person has a unique experience. When I was in Berkeley, I did not want to participate in kind of socially acceptable ways of getting my education. I wanted to have an interdisciplinary, multi-perspective, multi-departmental, multi-major. Because the way I thought and the way my life had been all the way up to this moment was very international, multi-perspective, multi-experiential. So I decided, I went to the department and I said, I want to create an interdisciplinary major. They said, well, what do you want to do with it? I said, I want to start something new because this is the way the world is changing. We've got majors from time immemorial, since the Greeks, physics, astronomy, mathematics. Each one of these different majors has its own department, people, but they don't interact with one another. We are coming into an age where our campus, for example, we're spending millions of dollars on creating departments or centers where all this knowledge can be integrated. And it's only then when we're going to start creating real innovation. I'm not discounting the old form of innovation, but this is more collaborative. It's more global, like we saw right now with the example of, the
micropixie.
A micropixie.
And Zev,
yes,
you have 3 minutes to finish this contextual piece and to move in, and then you'll have 8 minutes for this. So
perfect.
I just don't want you need to compress it just a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So speed up. It's a lot of information. I'm going to try to fit it into 20 minutes, and it just doesn't give it the, But anyway, let's. So now, what's happening here? I went to school. Web 2.0 had not started yet. It was Web 1.0, which is, the website to the person. The person cannot interact with the website, change the website, create their own content. I was bored. I took off, went to Guatemala, started a nonprofit with my friend. We did global sustainable development, hung out with these Mayan indigenous children, and we tried to figure out how to cope with this or solve the situation of anemia and this population. By interacting with these children, I got to learn a lot of their folklore, their tales, what they believed, their world vision, their ideas of what the world was. I also lived on a tiny little island called Utila. Children did not go to school. There were beer bottle caps everywhere because there was a lot of drinking going on. But I took those beer bottle caps and I said, let's start making art. And we made signs for these for stores around the island. And these people did not have any concept of what it was to hang a sign on top of your door because they didn't need any signs. There was only one of each type of store. So it was this kind of combination of thought and place and identifying a place. So they came up with names like octopus, shrimp, lobster, squid. And this was their way of signifying what that place meant to them. So, wrap this up. We'll get to the contextual part now. Thanks for your patience. So, shifting the locus of interaction. I really don't like to sit down, but I'm going to have to right now. Repositories of knowledge have historically been centralized in physical places like libraries, their books and manuscripts far distant from the topics on which they expound. In the 20th century, computation required people to gather around the computational artifact, whether it was a massive room full of tubes or a beige box on a desktop. To gain some benefit from the magic of computer processing, like cavemen huddled around a fire, they were forced to a particular location centered on a precious resource. Over time, these resources have become portable and mobile. Books were mass-produced and safely carried out into the world. Computation and digital displays travel with us whenever we go in the form of mobile phones, PDAs, and laptops. Knowledge, computation, sensing, and presentation have moved from monolithic and centralized to mobile and distributed. This shifts the locus of visualization and interaction into the environment and objects we encounter. Treated as extensions of perception and cognition, they change behaviors by changing how we view the world and our expectations about interacting with the environment. The use of georeferenced information on the web has recently received increasing interest in the research community and the public. People use interactive maps to share their favorite places with others and they use geo-browsing services for planning their vacation. Spatial information is even more useful in mobile situations because it is directly related to the user's surroundings. The idea of mobile spatial interaction is becoming increasingly relevant, feasible, and desired. Location and orientation sensing hardware is being integrated into a growing number of handsets and can be expected to be even more widespread in the near future. At the same time, geographic information systems and 3D models are becoming more sophisticated. Augmented reality, another term that I'd like to kind of familiarize with those of you who don't know. Augmented reality refers to computer displays that add virtual information to a user's sensory perceptions. By doing this, these systems are adding layers of sensory-rich information over the physical environments that surround us. This information can come in the form of sounds, animations, graphics, text, video, images, scans, and so forth. So, remember when I talked about the piece of paper hanging in midair, conceptual piece of paper? What I'm trying to get to is, with this kind of innovation in mobile media, technologies that allow us to interact with our spaces using GPS, georeference information, what I foresee in the future is a bunch of people using Web 2.0 tools, creating information about their places, then interacting with one another, sharing their stories. Now this visual display I had over here, I came across this place. It was where Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera actually lived in San Francisco while they were here for about a year or so. The way I came across this place was because my neighbor passed away, unfortunately, and I actually inherited a part of his belongings. I didn't know he was an artist and an architect at the time. And he happened to live in that same building. He acquired a lot of the things that were associated with that building. And I found out he lived in that building because out of his portfolio fell out a newspaper article from 1952. As I'm reading it, I'm a big Frida fan. I actually spent some time in Mexico, and I went to her house, sat in her library, and I tried to soak in all the knowledge that was in that room. I mean, this is very conceptual stuff, but I'm sorry. So I have this nail. It's not just any old nail. It's a gold rush ship. I found out from this newspaper article, I'm doing research at the Historical Society, or the Library Center at the San Francisco Library, that the building that they occupied, that they lived in, they created that art, was actually an old gold rush ship from the gold rush days. They took these gold rush ships, hoisted them onto land, and created buildings out of them. There's only a couple left, and it's on Montgomery Street. You can go and visit it, 760 Montgomery Street. And so all the things that building just happens to be a very famous building because a bunch of other artists used to live there as well. Bret Hart, he wrote the book, The Luck of Roaring Camp. And actually, this place that you just saw was where he had his desk. And he wrote that book. And so what I'm trying to get to is spaces hold a lot of information that we haven't tapped into. What kind of help do we need as society, as governments, as institutions, as neighborhoods? We need the open access of information. Museums, libraries, schools, various types of institutions hold repositories of this knowledge, whether it be images, music, books, knowledge that's been copyrighted. I'm going to take a risk or a chance here and say, maybe it's time to open up these repositories. I'm not saying let's exchange this information for free. But what I'm saying is, when you go to the British Museum and you have all this information, and you have a place, you know there's a lot of history in that place. You know, when you go to, let's say, the Roman ruins or the Greek ruins, you know that there's certain statues that belong in museums, various museums all around the world. Why not take all those statues and bring them back digitally, mastered in your own kind of using your Web 2.0 tools. And then share that with your friends. Add your own information. Take a snippet of music. And then create your experience and share that with other generations. So I want to also include that we have to think about things like indigenous rights, indigenous people's digital rights, because these people don't know about what it means to trademark something, copyright something, create lock and key type mechanisms under it. Now, it has worked in our society because it's been an important part of innovation to address, to give proper credit to the people that created, housed, archived this information. But I would like to see a world where you could use this information to create your own new iteration of what it means, of what that certain georeference point means to you. And we can only do that when people start opening up, using Creative Commons so they can share each other's works. So when I go to this place here at 716 Montgomery Street, this is an experience that I had. That's Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera standing in front of that fireplace over there. And only I know that, and the people in this room probably. How many other people would have known that just passing by that building? Right now, that place is a stock brokerage firm. You just walk by it, you don't know that history exists over there. But with this technology, mobile spatial interaction, mobile phones that have high battery powers, good graphics accelerators, and people with knowledge that they can use to share, create these Web 2.0 tools, we can bring ourselves into a Web 3.0 world where information flows, where copyrights are negotiated, but on a more personal level. You don't have to jump through so many hoops to get a picture of a statue to put in your presentation. Because the fact of the matter is that statue belongs to society. It belongs to the global history. And as citizens of the world, we should have access to those relics and be able to use them in our creations.
Zev, that's very profound.
Thank you very
so
much.
much.